Right.
Do they sort of overwrite each other in terms of importance?
The order, the last style is the one that's going to take precedence.
Okay.
Not you might think like, oh, if I define it first, then that's what it should be, but it's not that way. It's the one you define last.
Why wouldn't you want to just remove the old command?
You probably would. Honestly, you would. It's more of a sense of if you're using multiple style sheets, and also when we look at classes and IDs, you'll see that there's more than one way to style an element. Like you don't just have to, like if you have an H1, why are you calling me? I don't like you. If you're doing, if you're styling an element, then it's pretty straightforward. But once we get into classes, you'll see that there's kind of multiple hooks into different elements. Also, when I say that they override, let's just look at this real quick. Oh man, I just realized it's amateur hour with not getting Chrome updates right now. Oof. Oh shit. .net. They really need to get the .com. So if you have, let's think of it. By the way, this is jsfiddle.net. It's just a cool site if you want to do real quick sketches on JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. Another one that's really good that a lot of more design type folks use is codepen.io. Codepen.io. This site's actually, you know what? This one's a lot cooler because this is like a lot of people showing off fun animations and stuff, which is kind of neat. So if you go to this website, you can see like, oh look, somebody did a typography experiment. Let me click that. Cool. Oh, awesome, bro. And then you can kind of look in and see like what HTML did they use, what CSS did they use, what other stuff did they use. Which is kind of cool. But anyway, we don't care about that. We're gonna create our own one here. How do I do that? New pen. Oopsie. So let's just create the most simple HTML. Let's just do an H1, right? We like H1s. Oh Christ, we can't see it. Aw. I feel like you guys can't see this with the.
It's not easy.
Yeah. Oh well. Sorry guys.
Unless we turn all the lights.
Oh wait, settings? That was the same settings I just looked at. Change view? Nope. Aw, what a bummer. That sucks. Huh. Okay, whatever. Back to JS Fiddle. Yeah. This is just easier to see. So H1, hi everybody, H1, end tag. This should be pretty straightforward by now. If you don't get that, then see me after class. Run, there it is, right? Simple. So I just want to explain how this overriding thing. So I'm going to define an H1 and I'm going to say color blue. I'm going to do again. I'm going to say color blue. Oops, that's stupid. Red, right? Red? Who thinks it's going to be purple? Will not be purple. So red? Do we all think it's red? That's obvious, right? Because it's the last one. So let's run it and see what happens. Yay, we're all so smart. All right. So what if I set a background color here? You guys remember background color? Okay, see if I can type it correctly. I'm going to say green. Okay. When I hit run up there, is there going to be a background color here or not? And if there is, what color will it be? Huh. So there's two ways of thinking about this, right? You might think, oh, this was defined here, and nobody said it was anything different, so it's just going to be green background, right? That's one way of thinking about it. The second way of thinking about it would be, this is a definition here, right? And I said it's green, but then I redefined this down here, and I didn't say anything about the background color, so therefore, it should look just like this. Which one is right?
50-50 chance.
Which one is right? You know, yeah, 50-50, you can't go wrong. What do you think? Tina.
Second situation.
So it's going to be plain background?
Yeah.
Because we're overriding the style, right? Okay. That's interesting. Does anybody disagree with Tina?
Just for argument's sake, I'll disagree.
Frank, you disagree?
Yeah.
Wow.
Me and Tina.
So you think it's going to be green? You think because we didn't redefine it, because we didn't redefine this specific rule, that it's going to be green, right? That's what you're saying. In effect.
That's what you said. I'm agreeing with.
Right. You got to own it. All right. Lose. Win. Okay. So the reason is because the cascading, right? Think about it more as merging than overwriting. Okay? So it goes on a rule level, not a declaration level, right? Or sorry. Declaration, not rule, right? It's the opposite. There's also the concept of inheriting, right? Like, why, if I don't do any, well, wait, let's make sure that sticks first. Does that stick? Does it make sense why this happens? When we define this here, what we're saying is, in addition to everything else that's been defined for this H1, I want to add this rule, right? So if the color was already defined, then it's red. If not, then it's whatever. So like, for instance, remember how we saw that the browser adds its own defaults to everything? So let's look at this. I'm going to inspect this element. We get this, right? I see why the color's red. I said that right, or down here, right? This was where we defined it up here, right? Got it? What's this? This is display block, font size, 2Ms. WebKit margin, font weight bold. Where does this come from? It's the default. This actually comes from the browser. This comes from Google Chrome. So Google Chrome is saying font weight bold, font size 2M, display block. And these rules right here, these are really part of, I think, at least I know that the display block and the font weight are part of the HTML5 specification. So whoever these, academics write these rules, and then the browser maker implements the rules. So they say an H1 without any styling is going to look like this, right?
On any browser.
On Chrome. Yeah. Oh, it's so much fun. The browsers implement things differently. They do it pretty close though. Like if you go to Firefox, it's not like it's going to be, 10 pixel font and a light weight. It's going to be bold.
If I open the New York Times main page on Safari and then I open it on Firefox, it's different fonts.
Yep. It's going to look different. It's just there's inherent differences in any browser. Open an Internet Explorer on a PC and then open it on a Safari to really see a difference too.
So if you want to make sure, if you're doing a web page, designing a web page, and you want to make sure your typography is right.
On every browser?
Yeah.
You just gotta.
You have to spec all your type, every single piece of type, right?
Honestly, so this was a big deal, I'd say about 5 to 10 years ago, was making sure that your HTML was pixel perfect, right? So the designer creates a file in Photoshop, to the pixel, right? And everything's pixel perfect. And then as a web designer, you would go into the Photoshop file, the PSD, and you would cut out every little image, every background. Some stuff you could maybe repeat a background element or something, you could maybe cut some corners, but for the most part, you were just cutting out images and assembling them in this pixel perfect thing, right? So that the same site would look identical on Internet Explorer, Safari, Firefox, Chrome, whatever else, right? That is really no longer the case. We don't strive for pixel accuracy anymore, really. It's more about keeping the spirit of the design, especially when you consider that, websites used to be viewed on a monitor, right? That was it. Everyone had a monitor, and the monitors were like this big, right? And everyone had almost the same size. It was like 1024 by 768, and people used the same monitors. Then people started getting bigger monitors. And then new devices came into play. Now we got iPads, iPhones, Samsung phones are like this big. Like all these other form factors of devices. And so people quickly realized that pixel accuracy was just not achievable anymore. It's not, it shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should not be to be pixel accurate. It should be to retain the spirit of a design. You can do certain things to make sure that your typography is retained across the different platforms. I think more importantly, what we try to do is target the most popular browsers, like target Chrome, Safari, the newest version of Internet Explorer, and then for everybody else, there's a concept called graceful degradation. You guys know grace? You know what graceful means?
No.
Graceful? Graceful. It's like elegantly, like with grace, you know, with just like smooth, you know, like so you and degradation. To degrade is to
Lower the resolution.
It's to lower the fidelity or the quality, right? So if you gracefully degrade, then you're able to provide an experience to people who are using maybe an old computer. Like I want my grandma to see the website, but she doesn't have to see every cool special effect and every rounded corner and drop shadow and all that stuff, right? She just needs to see the content. So with graceful degradation as a concept, you want to make sure your site looks great on new stuff, and then on the older stuff, it's still viewable. Like it doesn't just break horribly. Like try opening Gmail with like an old version of Internet Explorer, and it still works, but they even tell you up front. They're like, you are going to experience, like there's a pop-up that comes and it says, this browser is not supported. Stuff might work, might not. This is not supported though, so don't expect anything from us. So that's kind of the ethic that we take when we're building this stuff. So yeah, the browsers are going to implement this stuff differently. I think one thing you see a lot is most people, or like most developers, web designers, one of the first things they include in their files is a style sheet that makes everything the same. So like you'll say, I want all H1s to be 2 M's and be bold, and that goes for everybody. So that means if you're on a browser that renders them at 1.9 M's and extra bold, then it'll be normalized, right? Reset down to something sensible.
Because your style sheet overwrites the browser style sheet?
It does. Because you're think about this, we go in order, right? So whatever comes last is what counts. That's what you see. The browser is called the user agent, whatever. The user agent style sheet is the very first one. So we just override everything that comes on it. So if we look at our H1, we didn't say it, but it's display block. We didn't have to say it. It was already defined up here. Basically, any property that gets defined here is also available up here unless you override it. Does that make sense? It's kind of tricky, but it should make sense. And in fact, if you can see what's called the computed style over here. Here, let's pull this up. You see this over here? This like big long list of stuff. This is here. I'm gonna get rid of that. No, it doesn't have a title, does it? Whatever. This is what's called the computed style. This is like the sum of all of the CSS attributes that are on whatever you've selected right now, right? So we could see, we got the color, which is red, we did that over here. The display block, which came from this. Font size, font weight, those came from here. So this is basically telling you all the styles that are currently in play for this element. And they might have come from 10 different places, but this is the end result. This is what it's going to look like. So sometimes you'll be looking at an element and you'll see this, and you won't, and there might be, like, we only have 3 things here, it's pretty easy, but in some sites you'll have like 20 things here, and you don't know where the hell a rule came from. So you can look over here and at least see, okay, the font size is being set at 32. I don't know where that happened. And once again, if we look 2 M's, translates over to 32 pixels. Your browser, because at the end of the day, your browser needs to render something on a bitmap screen, right? Like this, if you look really close, everything's dots here, right? So pixels are like an absolute measurement that your browser can say, okay, this thing gets rendered 32 pixels high. That's it. Yeah. Is that cool? Did I confuse you guys even more? No? Okay. Any questions?
I have another question.
Hmm?
If I give a head type before the H1 and then I write a CSS for the head. And
Wait. The head
the
tag?
head type.
Well, the head. Like there's a
We
header.
can't have.
You can't have
We
style
can't have style.
on the head.
The header.
Oh, the header. Header.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Because there's the head and the
Yeah,
header,
the
right?
header, yeah.
Okay.
And the H1 is inside the header,
Mhm.
and then I change the H1 style,
Mhm.
and will that change for because I write a
Because you're saying if you have a style on the header.
yeah.
That's a good question. What's
Yeah.
the best way to answer that is to just do it.
Yeah.
The answer is because H1 is more specific, the style on H1 will be the one you read. So, the question, Charlene's question, like that. Charlene's question is, if I have something like this, oops, style counts. Okay, here let's get rid of that.
Also, because it's a header, do you also need H1 before hi everybody?
Yeah. So you don't need it, but I think the H1 will give you at least some base styling. It'll make sure it's bold. It'll make sure the font's large. The header has no style at all attached to it. It's just block and that's it. Think of header as more of like organizing other content, not actually. It's like a semantic grouping of other tags, really. So let's say, what do you want to give? Let's give header background, or we'll say color blue, right?
So it's the same.
Oh, jeez, I'm so bad at examples. I'm sorry. Red. Okay. So header's red. The H1 we're saying is blue, and then let's get rid of the background color because that's just confusing. Oopsie. So if we go back to the note that we were looking at, the rules are so importance. Just disregard this one for now. Disregard this one. Specificity. Do you guys know what that means? Specificity. It means how specific something is. Do you know what specific? Specific. Like a certain thing, like how detailed you are when you describe this element, right? And then the last one is source order. And that just means the order that it comes in your CSS file, right? And last is more important, right? So what we're looking at here is specificity. So if I'm talking about the words, hi everybody, is it more specific or less specific to say that hi everybody is in the header or is in the H1? What's more specific? H1. Why is it more specific? Because it's right there. It's immediately wrapping the hi everybody. So H1 is more specific than saying header, right? So if I have a style on the H1, because specificity is one of the rules that we use to determine a style on an element, the H1 should override. And this thing should be blue, not red, when I hit the run button. There it is. So now, background color orange. Is this going to be orange or is it going to be white?
Orange.
Why?
Because it's not otherwise listed below.
Same as the other thing, right? And so let's do this. I'm going to show you about the inheritance here. And it is orange, of course. Good. So let's look at this real quick. Oopsie. All right. Our H1. So, color blue, duh. All this other stuff comes from our user agent, which is our browser, Chrome. And now check this out. Inherited from header. Color red, notice how it's got a strike through? Because we overrode that, right? Because it's more specific. H1 is more specific, so we don't show that. And then background color orange gets inherited. So you can add all kinds of styles to the header, and it'll override the H1. Let's see. Let's try some stuff out. Let's do font size. Font size. I'm gonna do it in pixels. I'm gonna make it really small. I'm gonna make it 8 pixels, and I'm gonna change the weight. Font weight normal. Sorry, it's kind of hard to read that stuff, but I don't know how else to do this. Let's just run that. Except I can't. Oh, that's nice. Bam. And now let's go back over. That's weird. Why is that? Yeah, wow, that's really bizarre. Huh. Oh, yeah. Duh. So, yeah. Yeah, that seems interesting. It's because we're setting the font size in the header as 8 pixels, right? Over there. But then our H1 is setting, its font size is set in ems. Ems are a relative unit, right? An em is the width of the letter M, right? It's like a weird typography convention for measuring font sizes. So because the parent of this is now 8 pixels, 2 M's is basically 2 times that. So it's going to be 16. That's weird. That's why typically we just specify our H1s, like we give it a font size in pixels. Just makes it easier. And then the font weight normal is getting overridden by the H1 definition. Because that's more specific. Right?
Yeah.
If you want to override these things, you have to do it directly, right? The font size one, that's tricky. Yeah, it's just because, I mean, M is it's relative to its parent.
So if
right?
you put that font size and the font weight to the H1, then it will change?
Yeah. So let's do. Should I do both of them?
No.
There we go. And now you can see it's not bold and it's 8 pixels. And if we look at it in here, yeah, the M thing is a bit of a kind of threw me off there. But yeah, now you can see font size. Because they're on the same element, it's not, it's overriding this one. I know it's confusing before because it's relative, so you're doing like multiplication to figure it out, but I hope that is not too confusing. And then the color you can see is overridden here. Yeah. Interesting. Let's try this. Yeah. It'd be like as if you were to do like back to the font thing. Like what if we did this? Font size 50%. Oopsie. You can use percentages, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. 50%. Half, right? Half. So now it's once again 16. It should be 16 pixels. Right? Yeah. Because 2 M's is 32 pixels, and the header percent relative, right? So H1, because it's an M, it's relative to its parent. I think you can change your base style sheet in Chrome. No, not easily. Like you could change. You could tell Chrome, all right, instead of 2 M's, I want it to be 20 pixels, right? If you want. But then all websites are going to look kind of weird. So maybe don't do that. Or it's kind of like, you know, if you go, I don't know, if you expand it, it doesn't change, right? The widths are changing, but not anything else. All right, cool. How are we doing? Did we get that? Tracking? Yeah? It's a little tricky. Just remember, importance, we'll get to important later. Specificity, how specific is it? Oh, wait, there's one thing I didn't even show you. Oh, wait, well, hold on. Slow down, Darius. How specific is the selector? And then the order that it comes in the file, right? Cool. Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff you can do to play around with these things. Like, let's see. Same thing, right? Even though the header is later in the source order, H1 is more specific, so that takes precedence, right?
So where do you find out? How do you know what is more specific than what?
Well, I mean, H1 is more specific than header because it's closer to what it's styling, right? Like, if we're talking about turning these words blue, the more specific, I want to make these two words blue, right?
Yes.
If I want to make these blue, the most specific way I can refer to this is by saying H1. I could refer to it as header, but that's not very.
But that refers to specificity. What about importance? How do you know what's more important?
There's a special keyword called important, which we'll get to later. It's that one. Don't worry about importance so much. Specificity and source order are the two that I think are going to make. Honestly, importance. A good example.
It's not like H1 is more important than a header.
It's more of the it has to do with how the rules are set up. Yeah, I think honestly this might be. I don't even know why. I don't even speak Arabic. I don't even write or speak Arabic. So I don't even know why I have that set up. I just do. I took lessons a long time ago.
Are you a terrorist?
I swear I'm not. I swear. Wait, what was that? Style. Remember, we're never supposed to do this. Never do this. Color. Green. Whoa. Now what? What happens now? I have an inline style that's staying color green, and I've got a style sheet that says color blue. This one's tough, right?
Yeah.
What color is it going to be? This is kind of a trick question. Because if you look at your HTML, you're like, oh, well, this is defined first, right? And that's defined later. So this should override that. Fortunately, that is not how it works. This thing is going to be green. This kind of comes back to importance. By putting your inline style on your HTML, you're implicitly, or I guess explicitly, saying that it's an important rule to follow. So it's going to override this stuff. There is one way around that. Oh, I hate that.
Why are there so many different ways? Why isn't there just one?
Because this is all just broken, busted technology designed by large committees of people. I'm just being honest. Like this, I mean, this is designed by committee. This is what happens when you come up with something over a long period of time where everybody has to say, and there's no like clear, like I mean, honestly, like dictatorships are bad, but you get stuff done, So
they say that the best art doesn't happen in a democracy.
Yeah,
it happens with a strong director.
It does. I mean, like if you look at good open source projects, you guys know what open source is, right?
Yeah.
It's like software that's developed in the open where anyone can contribute and view the underlying code beneath it. The best, most successful open source projects have, they're generally referred to as benevolent dictators for life, right? You guys know what Linux is?
Yeah.
Linux, an operating system that like all of our like phones, every server you go to runs on Linux. And that's, there's Linus Torvalds, Finnish guy, hacker, whatever, computer genius, is the man behind this who really, defined the vision and made it what it is today, right? But there's so many other examples. Like the Python language has Guido van Rossum, PHP, Rasmus Lerdorf. There's all these like really, there's something to be said for having somebody creating a vision and then bringing people towards it. Like look at Apple under Steve Jobs, right? Or Microsoft when Bill Gates was like in his prime. Those were companies with vision and leadership. The W3C, there's no guy or gal that you can look to who's like, oh yes, they're providing the vision here. It's just like a bunch of corporations with representatives who've decided on stuff. So a lot of it is like, learning these like weird little hacks and arcane little tools and hooks. But I think, so the kind of, to sort of abstract some of that complexity away, it's good to know the right way, the wrong way, good and bad, and kind of work with the tools in a way that you feel comfortable, and at least understand some of the kind of more obtuse or confusing parts. Get them on a basic level, but I mean, the fundamentals are pretty okay. Like, use an external style sheet. Define your elements like this. Don't do that. But if you see this, you should know what it means, right? Like, you should know that if somebody does a style attribute and assigns something, that it's what it's going to do, right? But you shouldn't actually do it. Why did they let you do that? I don't know.
Why do they make something that's supposed to quote unquote bad more important?
Well, the other thing though is that a lot of this stuff. Think about it, like it'd be like changing from driving on the right side of the road to the left side of the road overnight, right? Like you've got, especially in a country of our size, right? Like the U.S. is huge, right? So how would you do that? Like, or switching from imperial to metric. It's just impossible. There's too many systems already in place. There's too many things, too many people tied to this technology. So it's like that with HTML. Like there's too many websites. Like if that change was made where there were no more inline styles allowed, like a lot of websites would stop working. A lot of apps would break, especially old stuff or like corporate enterprise level stuff is going to break. So they have to support this old stuff because people are still using it, unfortunately. So bummer is what it is. But yeah, like I said, you should never do it. But if somebody does this to your code, though, like let's say somebody did that in your code. And what if you don't have access to this? Like, what if you can't physically change this file, but you need this to be blue, right? Or you get fired. What do? There's just nothing you can do, right? There's nothing. So this was added. This is hilarious. This is how you override an inline style with CSS. You literally use an exclamation point and then the word important. I can't make this stuff up. Like, this is actually how it's done. And I'll hit run, and it's blue now. Once again, like, if you use the important, keyword, yeah, exactly. It has to have an, and there's exclamation point, that's shift 1, right? And then the word important. Honestly, wait, don't even write this down. This is just, write it. But this is gross and hacky, and you really shouldn't, like, the same way you shouldn't do this, you really shouldn't do that either. These are kind of hand in hand. Like, this hack, people were like, well, let's use these external sheets. It's so much nicer. And then they're like, oh, but we already have all these sites that are using inline. We have to support them somehow. Oh, okay, well, we'll just let people use important. So what you end up with is people write CSS that just has important on everything. If you do that in this class, I swear I will infect every computer you own with so many viruses. I will steal your identity. I'm just kidding. I won't do any of that. I don't even know how. Just don't do it. Suffice to say. Cool? It's an imperfect world we live in. That's it, put a bow on it. All right, so let's get back to where we were. So practice. I guess for the interest of time, I'm gonna not do all these, but well, actually, yeah. There's this thing, the universal selector. All right. I'm just want to talk about some special cases, right? So this is the asterisk key. If you do Shift and the 8, the number 8 on your keyboard, you'll see that. What this says is all elements, everything, every element. So if you want to add a style to every element, you do that. Why would you do this? Maybe you're writing a special page with some weird behavior where you want everything to have a box around it or something. This is not used very often. You really shouldn't use it too much, but I want you to know what it is when you see it, right? This just means everything. And this star character is used throughout anything to do with computers, computer science, and it almost always means everything. It means match everything, right? Let's go to this is the element selector. We looked at this already. This should be familiar. We know this, right? H1. So I want to talk about a new way of selecting elements, and that's the descendant selector. Do you guys know what descendant means? Yeah, it's like remember we talked about parent-child.
Yeah.
You're like if I'm a child, like I am a descendant of my parents, right? I'm a descendant of my grandparents. So the descendant selector is saying, you know, if you have a parent-child relationship, then apply the styles to, and you kind of read these right to left, a strong tag that is inside of, that is a child of an H1. Trip off that for a second. So if we just had this on, Christ, it's a projector. If we just had just strong, right? That would apply to every strong tag, right? But by saying H1 and then there's a space here, right? If we say H1 space strong, that means every strong that is a descendant of an H1. So let's look at an example of this. Is that descendant? Okay. So right here. Actually, we have a great example right in front of us. So, yes or no? Is H1 a descendant of header?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a child of header. It's a descendant, we're talking hierarchically, right? Like everything's a tree structure, so H1 is a descendant of header. I'm going to do some more stuff. So I'm going to put oh, look at this. Sorry, I hate bad indenting. I'm going to put a P tag. Hi, everyone. Is P a descendant of header?
Yes.
Correct. Let's do this. Oh, whoops, that's not a tag at all. Let's do a strong tag. So, is strong a descendant of header?
Not directly.
Am I a descendant of my grandparents?
Yes, you are.
Not direct. Right? So, same situation, right?
Yeah.
So
Strong.
you're saying it is a descendant.
It is. It is. I am a descendant of my grandparents. Strong is me. Strong is me. Hardly. I should have picked. There's no weak tag. Sorry. So strong is a descendant of P. Strong is also a descendant of header. Okay? Clear? So now let's go back to the. Remember this? H1 space strong, right? So let's look here. Now let's get rid of this. This is killing me. I cannot look at that anymore. Let's go back, make it clean. Okay. So let's say we have a situation like this. Welcome. Okay. Let's just run this here. Okay. This is getting confusing. Let's just do this. Okay, great. So, let's look at an example. Header, H1. So, H1s are blue, right? So that's going to be blue, that's going to be blue. But then I'm saying after this, any H1 that is a descendant of a header, blue. Sorry. Red. So, do we have an H1 that is a descendant of a header in here?
Yes, we have. Parallel.
This. H1 is a descendant of header. Is this a descendant of header?
No.
No, because it's not inside, it's not a child of a header tag. So what's going to be red? Is it going to be 1 or 2?
The one.
1 is going to be red. Let's try it out. Perfect. So that worked. What about...
Well, why is it, oh, got it.
Yeah.
H1 is red, but not the P.
Yeah. Right. I mean, if we wanted to say, let's see, which one? What about this? Oops, it. Header P. Whoa, crazy. I just did 2 levels deep. A strong that is a descendant of a P that is a descendant of a header. Do we have that?
Yeah.
Yes.
That right here, right? Strong is the descendant of P, which is the descendant of header.
So I'm pumped is going to be orange.
Correct. Let's look at it. Now, what about, seems kind of wasteful though, because strong is also a descendant just of header, right? So is that going to work?
Yeah.
Is strong a descendant of header? Yeah.
But what if there is a strong in H1?
No, there's nothing with H1 here.
No, I mean, what if there is a strong tag in H1 in the header?
Let's try it out. Oh, I don't think we need this anymore for now. Okay. So yeah, what's going to happen here?
I think that both of the strong will be strong.
So we've said H1s are blue, but header H1s are red, but header strong is orange.
So it should be orange.
It should be what color?
Orange.
Why?
Because
We have 3 possible reasons. There's importance, specificity, source order.
source order.
Source order.
But also specificity.
But the specificities are equal, right? Although, no.
What?
Yeah. This is actually more specific.
But it
Yeah.
So this right here, so strong, should be orange, right? And it is. But what if, so if source order were the case, then this wouldn't work, right? Like, so what color do we think the strong is going to be?
Red. Actually, we have the one.
So this is
orange.
it's still going to be orange because so the importance levels are the same, right? We're not using that stupid important hack. So then the next thing we look at is the specificity. Which one is more specific?
Header strong.
Header strong is most specific. So it's going to be orange, right?
Yeah.
Even though header H1 comes later in the source order, it doesn't matter because the specificity is the second thing we look at, right? If these things are just as specific, so wait, I got a good one. What about? So honestly, we're gonna get to some of these that I won't even know the answer. What about that? Whew. So first, look, importance is the same, right? So what about the specificity? What's more specific? H1 strong is more specific, and it's later in the source order.
Why
So
is H1 more specific than header strong? Seems like
Because
H1
header is farther out in the parent-child relationship, right? H1 is closer to strong than header.
Oh, so that
Right.
that has a bearing.
Yeah. That's where the how specific it is, right? When we say specificity, we mean specificity in the parent-child relationship, right? In the hierarchy of your tag, in your tag hierarchy, I should say. I'm actually, yeah. So this, the H1 strong is red indeed, but now I'm so curious to see, what if we do this? I think it's going to be the same. I think it's going to be the same. Oh my God, I was completely wrong. Wow. Okay. So, does everybody see what's going on here? I'm going to make this completely apparent because it's kind of confusing. I'm going to get rid of all this other crap so we can have a clean example here. Wow. What's happening here? Interesting. Okay. Wow. It's an example that even confused me. I guess the specificity. I guess yeah. Header strong is the same specificity level as H1 strong. Huh.
So the override is the last one, right?
Yeah, but that's because of the source order, right?
Uh,
Orange comes after.
Yeah.
So if we were to,
that's
What were you expect, Darius? What were you expecting was going to happen?
I thought it was gonna be red because H1 strong is more specific, and I thought that would.
No.
The high everybody was going to be red, or the what's happening?
The what's happening? Yeah. Like honestly, I can even get rid of this just to not confuse anybody. Strong. Yeah. Yeah. So this, it's red here, but it's gonna be orange here.
Because of the order.
No, but
I think because those specificities are counted as the same.
Yeah.
It's the same specificity.
So what you said earlier about parent-child relationship. I'm just trying to fit. I'm trying to. figure this out.
Yeah.
What if we
I'm just confused myself.
header H1 strong in front of H1 strong?
Great point. See, that's super specific, right? So that excellent case right there. Color, what have we not used? Green, thank you. Trouble
We're going to
doing
put up space between them. No.
You don't. That's actually a really nice point, just to make our code more readable. It's nice to have consistent spacing. Okay. So now we've got a much more specific tag.
So it's green.
What do we think? I'm not even clicked yet. Green. It's green. So this is where. So I guess where the confusing thing here is that these two don't seem like they're the same specificity level because header is farther away than H1, but they are.
I think maybe
It's because
because strong.
the base, yeah. The tag that we're actually styling, like we're not styling the header tag, we're not styling the H1 tag, we're styling the strong tag. So that's the one
They're the same.
that's the specificity is calculated from here. Sorry, that's like this is the edge case stuff. But yeah, that as we can see is way more specific. So this one takes precedence before these two, even though they're later in the source order. Okay. Ew. How's this holding up? Generally, going 3 levels deep is that's probably the farthest you want to go. Like you don't want to go too deep on these. Like,
What do you mean by 2D?
so right now we've got 3, right? Header H1 strong. If I had like a let's let's do an M tag. Let's run that, right? What if I wanted to style that M tag? Is that even a color? Yes. Can anyone even see that that's gray? Trust me, it's gray. Like when you find yourself doing this, that's kind of unnecessary. I mean, it's confusing. You got 4 things to look at. I mean, you could say the exact same thing with any combination of, this, still gray. You could make it this. Yeah, as long as you're styling the M itself, you don't need all those layers. Generally, you shouldn't write more CSS. You should try to write less CSS. Like, that should be your general goal in everything you do. You should always write less of this stuff.
That's why I'm mystified that you wouldn't just clean it up and omit what the old idea is and keep the new idea. And just go back and omit the code that you don't need anymore.
Well, you do run into some more complex scenarios where you have just on a big complicated web page. Sometimes you'll need to go a little deeper and kind of inherit, or you want to override styles on a very specific tag. I mean, some of that, if you kind of architect your CSS well at the beginning, you have to do that less, but you still see it. So it's important to know that you can do it as well. Like if you needed to style just this end tag, right, without access, with the inability to change any of the HTML, which does happen, then you need to know how to be able to access that, right? And if there's already styles on the header and the H1 and the strong, then you'd have to very specifically target just the end tag, right? Let's see. I mean, if we just said all ends are gray, that works too. But that's because it's specific to the tag. Does that make sense?
Just try. Just double try.
Yeah, no, I did. I clicked run. It definitely does work. So that's descendant selectors, right? So you can see it's starting to get a little trickier, right? Now we've got a way to style tags based off of their order compared to other tags. So let's talk about IDs. Okay. Don't call it a hashtag. This, right here. You just said hashtag. So this, you can call it, I mean, we can call it a hashtag, it's fine. A pound. But when you see this right here, so this, what is this? Is just a regular CSS declaration, right? We've got our rules, right? Property value, rule, declaration. The only difference is what is this thing here, right?
It's a name.
This. So an ID is a way to identify an HTML element on your page. You can only use an ID name once per page, right? So it should be generally describing the element that you're looking at, okay? So once on a page, what can be used for fragment anchors, we'll talk about this part later. That's less important. The more important part is using IDs for styling. So here's an example of an ID tag right here. Of an ID attribute. So we have a regular P tag, right, paragraph. You just say ID equals, and then whatever you want. In this case, we're calling it wrapper. Maybe it's not a very specific name, but it certainly, it says it's wrapping something, right? Let's look at this in practice. That's the best way to do any of this stuff. So let's say we've got a page. Let's pull a page up. Let's use some H2s. I'm sick of all these H1s. Just really only have one per page. Example. The example. Okay. I am a page. Okay. Let's give this thing an ID. We're going to call it like title. Okay. So this ID is really what it's doing. It's identifying this element on the page. We can only use this name once per page, right? So you can't turn around and do this. Like this? No. Can't do that. Once per page. There is a way to do things multiple times per page. We'll look at that later. This, bad. So, whoops. So as you can see from the notes here, the way we style an ID is using this hash thing. So let's do that here. Oops, I just gave it the wrong name. Sorry, wasn't paying attention. Title, just like that. And then let's do what we've been doing. Background color, whatever, orange or something. There we go. I just styled this thing with an ID. Now, why would you want to do this instead of just referring directly to the H2? And the reason is a lot of times you reuse your tags, and you don't want every tag to look the same. For instance, this is used a lot with divs. All right. So let's create a basic page structure, right? So I'm going to create a div, or let's do this. Header ID equals main header. We're going to call it main header. Oops. And then we'll have oops, God, this thing's so annoying. Your IDs, by the way, can't have spaces, no spaces. So instead, we use the dash character. Yeah, no spaces.
The dash or the equal sign?
No, this right here.
Oh.
Like I call it main dash footer because we can't have spaces. All right, so then inside of here,
What is the ID tag again? Sorry.
it's identifying an HTML element on the page.
All right.
Yeah, it's used essentially as a hook to style things. But an ID.
But isn't that inline styling?
No. So what we're going to do is we set up our IDs, and then later we can control the way that they look using our styles. Let me set this thing up real quick.
Yeah, sorry.
Cool. Or actually, I should do. Okay. Contrived example, but it actually kind of makes sense. Oh, this should actually be an H. There we go. Okay, cool. That's much better. So we've got a very simple page structure, right? We've set up a header. We have this div in the middle, which is just a generic container, and we're going to call it content. And then we've got a div at the bottom that says main footer. I actually just realized that should probably be a footer tag, not. We have the footer tag. We should use the footer tag. Footer here. Cool. Oh, shit. Did I just. Oh, it's fine. So, one cool thing about the ID is that it quickly lets you know what you're looking at. Like, right now I can be like, oh, main header, that's the main header of the page. I see ID equals content. It's a generic name, but you see that often enough to where you know, okay, this is where like the main page content starts. And then main footer, it's kind of like, all right, this is the main footer on the page. So I might see another footer somewhere else, another footer tag, right? here I have a header tag here, but that's not the main header. That's just a regular header. So it's good for identifying kind of high-level content on a page. And like since we can't reuse these, I know that if I use content here, then this is the only occurrence of this on this page. So if I want to apply styles to content, then I know that it's only going to affect this chunk here. If I apply styles to div, it could affect something somewhere else, right? Like I might, let's say this thing, this thing's probably going to have a div somewhere. So if I want to style just the content in here, how would I do it? If I want to make just this blue, but I want this to all stay white, plain, I mean, I can't just do this, right? Because now both of these are going to be blue, right? If I want to just style this content right here, there's no way to do it unless I use IDs. So in this case, let's say all our divs will be blue, except content, yeah, color red. Now, because content, in this case, what type of element is content referring to? Which element?
The depth.
The header.
Vision. What do you call it?
Div.
Div, yeah.
Because the ID equals content is happening on the div tag, right? So this content is referring to a div, right? So if we look at the inheritance of the styles, you'll see first it's defined as blue, and then our content is going to define it as red, right? And we can see that over here. Oops. Yeah. So it starts off blue, color red. Got it? Crazy. All right. Oh wait, let's do this again. This fun game. What's more specific? The element or the ID? ID. So it should be red. And thank God it is. There's a little part of me that was like, oh, this isn't red. I'm really upset with myself. And like one thing to note, I do this stuff every single day, and yet I'm still a little bit tripped up by some of these things because it's confusing and it doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it does, and I think this does make sense. I mean, referring to the ID is a more specific way of saying any div on the page, right? We're not saying any div, we're saying this specific div.
I'm a little tripped up on why you're using header inside of content. Why don't you just use H2? Why do we need to bind it by header?
In this example, probably don't. I mean, we don't. It's kind of it's like an extraneous grouping. I think this would make more sense if it was like, or if we had, nice. Like that would probably be a better example, right? Because then now we're grouping our stuff a little better. Sometimes on this header, you'll have stuff like this too, where it'll be like P. That's probably better, right? Makes a little more sense as an example.
So it's okay to have sorry. It's okay to have more than one header on a page, obviously.
Headers are okay. Yeah.
But then when I think of header, I think of just something that's running along the top.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when the HTML5 spec first came out, people, once again, these are very fluid specs. A lot of people were saying, okay, the header is used for just the header of the page, and the footer is used for the footer, and that's it. Once per page, that's it. More people started using the elements, actually reading the spec, and realize that it really is just defining a header or a footer on a discrete piece of content.
Okay.
And a lot of times, if you have a page with like multiple articles on a page, like a blog where you're listing like all the posts from the past week, you might have multiple headers and footers on a page. So
Yes.
it's okay to use multiple of these.
Why the article inside the content is blue?
Why is this blue?
Because
Yeah,
div
it's
not defined
it's not defined.
Defined as a-
Ah,
Okay,
it's
so,
not
yeah.
defined.
So content is so this div is all blue, but
It's
this-
all, it's all red.
this is like this div is defined as blue right here, right?
Yeah, but it's inside the.
But this is more specific.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trippy, right?
Oh my
It's confusing.
Just try. I think for the real practice
Yeah,
situation,
you just gotta, yeah.
Try
Like
that.
this is not the kind of thing that you sit there and write the code and you look at it and you no, you write it, you hit save, you go to your browser, you refresh. You're like, why doesn't it work? And you go back and you edit, you try stuff, and then you start to learn it. You can't, you're not gonna get far if you're just looking at it. And the cool thing is you can just save it and refresh and see your changes immediately. Especially if you're using these computers where you have two screens, you can have like your code in one and your browser in the other, and then you kind of just go back and forth refreshing. Just make sure you save before you refresh. But yeah, this is an interesting one because we see how the specificity comes into play too. Yeah, and yeah, it is okay to have multiple tags inside of a header, right? Your header is just saying like this is the content that's the head of what comes next.
In the same way, again, I want just if you could explain how you were using div, because for some reason I managed to do all my coding without using it but once.
Div's a weird one. It's a generic container. It's for when you don't have a more semantically meaningful tag at your disposal.
Okay.
I think for this, like maybe I should have used article instead of div here, right? You don't put articles inside of articles, but it's okay to have divs inside of divs. It's a useful generic container, really. Like
Does
this
it
could probably be a p tag.
Yeah.
Does it add us a line space by using it?
In the sense, not like empty space, but it'll go to the next line of whatever you're doing. Like if you have two divs on top of each other, like this right here, because they are block level, right? I will be on a new line. So this, right? This corresponds to this.
Right.
So this, I will be on a new line. I mean, I kind of gave it away, but will it appear here or below?
It'll appear
Below. Yeah, exactly. And there it is. I will be on a new line. Even though it could clearly fit here, but because it's block level, these are both block level. It's not how. Yeah. If I replace these with spans,
What's span again?
span. Honestly, I don't even. It's just mean. I don't think it has like really no semantic meaning at all. It's just it spans the length of whatever's here, right? And span, the difference, div is block level, meaning it'll be on a new line. Span is inline, meaning I'm going to refresh this, and notice how everything is now all on the same line, and it's red now because it's not
div.
It's not div. Yeah. If we wanted to make those spans another color, we could do, like that.
What happens if you use more than one? You said only one ID, but
Let's see. Here's the thing. It's going to look fine.
then why you should?
The browser will have that.
Yeah, it'll work just fine. Everything will work. How annoying is that? So we said red, right? What if I change this to be content? So once again, wrong,
Can't.
invalid,
Right.
can't do it.
You can't do more than.
You can only have one per page, and it looks perfect, right? It does exactly what you think it would do. It's because HTML and CSS are very forgiving, right? They want you to be able to write web pages. They don't want you to make one tiny mistake and then all of a sudden your page breaks. That sucks, right? The web is supposed to be for sharing information and for communicating. It's not to be pedantic and perfectionists. So the browsers forgive you if you do this. Now, where this becomes a problem is when we get to using JavaScript, right? JavaScript will flip out on this because in JavaScript, it's a programming language that's on top of HTML. So if JavaScript is looking for something with an ID called content, and you give it 2 on a page, I mean, JavaScript's a programming language. It's like garbage in, garbage out, right? Like if you give it bad data, you're going to get.
Crash or they will
It would you'd be surprised. Some of the it'll just cause unexpected behavior.
Okay, unexpected.
Like your program will break in ways that you don't understand, and then you'll realize, oh shit, I'm using the same ID twice on a page, and then you fix it and everything works after that. So it's just ID. Use them once. Use it once. If you use it twice, you're doing it wrong. Yeah. So you might be thinking, oh, cool. So now I can just go through and give everything an ID, right? And I can style things using IDs. That makes sense. So yes and no, right? What if we have like specific situations where we want to style multiple things the same way? Let's get rid of all this bullshit here. All right. And wait, did I have an example for classes? Shit. So this is where we introduce the class selector. I'm not going to get into this yet. I just wanted to look at that. Okay. So let's say we are on our website. We have a lot of buttons, right? I'm going to use the button element. There is a button element.
So, if we click this button, we direct it to another page?
No, nothing happens. Nothing happens. Yeah, you need JavaScript to do anything.
JavaScript to do that.
Well, yeah, or a form tag, but JavaScript is really what you would want to use here. Yeah. So I'm going to get rid of this. So let's say I want these two buttons to be, red, and I want these two to be blue.
You can give them
So what can I do here? Like, how can I make these two red and these two blue?
you can do button tag.
Button tag? Okay, let's do that. So let's just go up here. Color red.
It's going to make them all red.
No.
Okay. We're getting there.
So you have to use HTML to give them a name, ID name of the.
Okay.
So
Let's do that. So IDs. Let's call it. Like, this is a common convention when you're giving a button a name. You use BTN.
What?
It's just shorter than writing the whole word button out.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll say BTN red. It's actually a bad idea to use colors in your ID names. I'll forgive it for now. Let's just do it. And then so I want this one to be red too. But I can't give them the same name, right? That's wrong. So okay, maybe I'll call it button red 2. Okay, we're getting there. So let's do this. Did I forget something? Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll get it. By the way, your IDs can end with numbers, but they can't start with numbers. Okay. All right. So we did it. All right. Those are cool. So now if I just do this for the other two, I can make them blue, right? And I'll go here. Can I just copy these? This is ridiculous. All right, cool. I did it. Did I, though? Did I really do this the right way? What was one of the, you remember how we said don't repeat yourself?
Repeat yourself.
Remember that? There's DRY versus WET.
Right.
What WET? We enjoy typing. I just copied and pasted the same word over and over again, like 4 times. What if there were more buttons on this page? What if we had 50 buttons on this page? Am I going to really copy and paste the same thing over and over? I'm a developer. I'm a programmer. I would never do that. So this is where you can see where the restriction of one ID per page gets complicated, right? If I could just give these the same ID, button red, and then just call it button red, then I could make this code a lot simpler. I just have 2 buttons.
So you can give them a div as a parent to the button.
I could do something like that. Yeah. But here's where CSS actually offers us a very nice solution. Okay, and this is the class selector. So before we had the hash symbol, right? Pound symbol, whatever you call it. Class is a dot. Just a dot. Right next to the comma and the slash question mark on your keyboard. And it works just like an ID. You can give it any combination of letters, dashes, underscore. You can have numbers, but only at the end. You can't start with a number. Actually, you can have numbers in the middle, but just not. It can't begin with a number. It has to begin with a letter. So
all selector cannot begin with the number.
Yeah, correct. Can't begin with a number. Now, that's another thing where it might work on some browsers, but if you do anything in JavaScript, it's going to break. So the one thing about classes I think it's really important is don't get crazy with these, right? You need to restrain yourself. Like I said, you want to write as little HTML as possible. You want to write as little CSS as possible. Like, the best code is less code, really. So keep that in mind. If you're writing a bunch of classes that do the same thing, you're probably doing it wrong, right? Naming things is one of the hardest things in web programming. So when you have to come up with a class name for something, it's just difficult. So like, think about the names. Maybe don't overthink it. Give it a name. Come back to it later. But yeah, this is a common thing you'll see, that just giving stuff a name is hard. Because in order to name something, you have to really understand it.
So you were going to apply this to the previous example?
Exactly, yeah.
I just want to see it.
Yeah. So, here we go. Instead of these IDs, right, let's give it a class, and let's just, now remember, classes, you can have more than one, right? More than one. So, I just changed ID to class, and now I have a class called button red. Of course, what do I have to do instead of the hash symbol here?
Dot.
Exactly. Bam, I have a class now. So let's get rid of all these other ones real quick because I don't need them anymore. Or we're going to replace them. So now for this, I can just call this class. Let's see what happens. Nice. Worked. And now I can do the same thing with blue, right?
Let's call it class.
Yep, I just do dot, button, blue, color, blue. Let's go back here. Let's just call it a class.
What aren't you contradicting your? I don't understand. But in your style sheet, if you've got another command that's identical to the one above it, doesn't it overwrite it? Doesn't it trump?
Well, these aren't the same though. That's button red. That's button blue.
Oh, I thought, because it starts with button, I thought it was.
Oh no, it's good to have a consistent class naming scheme, right? Like I'm just calling it button dash red because then I know if I'm looking at my style sheet, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a red button. Now here, let me just give you this one thing that happens all the time. You're doing a website, and all of a sudden, somebody who is on the business side is like, hey, we just got the new numbers in. Everything that used to be red is now orange. Go ahead and make that change. So you're like, all right, I got to change everything that was red to orange now. So now I have to go to my shit, and I could just do this, right? I could just change this to orange, right? And now, bam, it's orange. But look at my code now. If you're reading the code, you're going to say, oh, button red. This is probably a red button.
Yeah.
But then you look at your CSS and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Why is the red button orange? This is an example of bad class naming. because everything always changes. Even if it's just you on a project, you might wake up and decide everything's going to be orange.
So don't put the color in there.
Don't give it a color. Call it something like, we can do better than that. What about primary? And what about button? We'll call this secondary. I think it's okay to use expressive class names that mean stuff. And then now, when you come back to your code, you can say, oh, I'm going to change all the primary buttons to red or orange or whatever, and all the secondary buttons to blue or whatever. And that's that. So let's say that same business person, oh wait, what did I do? Oh, because I didn't change this to primary. Let's say that same business person comes in and they say, oh, you know what? Everything needs a green border. All the buttons need a green border. All the buttons need a green border. They're like, first, I hate you. Why are you making me change everything? Second, how can we do this without changing all of them? So I mean, sure, I could do this. I could do this. I could say, right? That's you may not know this command, but that's adding a border, right? 1 pixel, so it's gonna be 1 pixel wide. It's gonna be solid. There's also dashed, dotted, a couple others, and then the color. I'm just using green here. So this works. Why the backgrounds all of a sudden turn gray, I have no idea.
No fail.
That's really strange, man. Really strange. It has something to, I think by default they have a shadow color or something. Yeah, that's fine. So this is cool. We definitely repeated this though, right? It's kind of annoying. And if we have a different button type, if we add a new button type, let's say we have to add a new button called the info button. Oopsie. Now, if I want to style my button info, I'm going to be copying. Oops. And it'll be just black. So you can see that this is working, but I'm also copying this a lot. And you might get to a point where you're like, this is getting to be too much. And what if the business comes back and they say, oh, remember that green border? Guess what? It's now purple. You're like, shit, so I got to change purple in 3 different places in this file. It's just annoying. So one thing you can do instead is you create a class that you give to all of these, and you can move this functionality into its own class. So what if we had a class that all it does is just give a border? And we'll just call it button, because it's a basic class. All the buttons have a 1 pixel border green. I'm going to get rid of this. So now you're like, well, Darius, these things already have classes. How can I give them 2 classes? Right? So we have to give these 2 classes. The way you do that, it's actually really simple. You just use a space. That's it. So now this button has 2 classes. It's got button and it's got button primary. So it's going to get a border and it's going to get a color of orange. That make sense? So I can do this. This is a pattern you see a lot in CSS, where you'll create a class that gives an element some sort of basic function or some basic style, right? Like our button might have, you know, maybe we'll do background. And white smoke, you know, like that. And then now we can change our border. We can make all of our borders 10 pixels. We can do it all by just changing 1 class, and it changes all of our other buttons. That's pretty cool. That's the power of abstraction and encapsulation, which we can go through later. But and you can see, you know, we definitely wrote some classes here. There's a lot of these going on. But at least you can look at this code and you can tell. Oh, okay, this is a button element. It's using a basic button style, and this is our secondary type. So whatever that means. Maybe secondaries are smaller or something.
we can, what if we change the color of the font? The
Well, you mean this, right?
yeah,
What if you change it up there?
right. You will override? No.
Wait, what?
I mean, like change the BTN and change the color to red.
To the BTN.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah.
Override.
Good call. Yeah, red. So, I mean, here, these are both the same specificity, right? They're the same. They're both classes. They're same specificity. So in this case, it's going to be down to order.
What?
It's going to be order because they're the same. They're the same specificity, right?
Okay.
Like primary is the same as button as far as how specific it is.
Yeah.
So it's really going to be the one that comes last.
Okay.
So in this case,
Override.
it's still going to be orange. The cool thing about that though is that what if we just have a button down here, and it doesn't. All it has is the basic button class, right? That's it. Oh, I didn't give any text. Yeah. So our just generic button class has a few styles. It's got border, background color, and then we're just using these special classes to add a different style to them. And you can see, think about it, if we didn't have this button class, we would have to add these two lines to every single one of these in order to get the same thing. And the cool thing is that if we want to change our button styles, we can do it a lot easier just by changing this. Like we can do border radius. Cool. You know, or change, we can change anything about these, right? The 10 pixels is kind of killing me. Yeah. So that's kind of a, oh shit, we're way past time. A basic example of using classes. Are there any questions on this? This is getting into confusing territory. Yeah?
I think so.
Does your smile indicate understanding or confusion?
Confusing.
Confuser standing? Okay, good. Wow, we got through, let's see, how many slides did we actually get through today?
Stay classy.
3!
There we go.
The thing is, like, this stuff's, it's not necessarily easy, it's tricky, and if you don't understand it, then it's going to be hard to do anything else after this. Like, it's going to be really hard. So, we're at the end. I didn't get through any of the stuff I wanted to talk about.
We have more?
Yeah. Table. Oh, that's nothing. Well, we have, this was a great example I would love, can't wait to get to. There's other ways you can refer to classes. Remember, we looked at this, the descendant.
Yeah.
There's also selecting the direct child, the siblings, and the general siblings. Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous. I have an example set up for that. Pseudo selectors for links. We haven't talked about the box model, which is how margin and padding are applied. I know there's a lot of shit here, man. This is complicated stuff. We're styling robots. Then we have to get to floats, positioning, images.
We got float.
Torn. Okay, I'm down with it. Do you guys want an assignment this week? Say yes.
Yeah.
All right. You have to practice. If you don't practice this stuff, you're never going to learn it. You're going to be stupid. Okay, so let's. All right. Here's week 4. This came at the end of a much longer lesson, so you still don't know anything. But so if you click on this link, there's a zip file.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know how to open zip files? Please say yes.
Yeah.
Here it is, assignment 04. Okay, so can you guys see my screen? It's a file called index.html and a file called main.css. Okay, so what you need to do is open up index.html. I'm going to open it in a browser. This is what it looks like. It looks like shit, basically, right? It's just generic. There's no styles. And then here's the CSS. And so what I want you to do is don't edit any of the HTML. You're not allowed to touch the HTML. Don't even send me the HTML. Just edit the CSS file and make this page not suck. You're all aesthetically inclined. You know what looks good or bad. So just make this page look good. What this page is, it's just a really basic generic portfolio set. That's all it is. There's a logo, a navigation, a welcome tagline, and then a list of projects, a bio, a contact, and then a footer. Very simple. All the HTML is done for you. Oh wait, I already did that. All the HTML is done for you. Just change the CSS.
So
Here's the HTML, just so you can see it. Pretty basic. So really, and I know we haven't gone over a lot of CSS, so you will at some point will hit a thing where you're like, I want to do something and I can't. So I'd say do what you can. Feel free to go ahead in the lessons and look at more stuff. Next, yeah.
We can't touch the HTML file, so if we want to add a class or an ID to that page, then we can't do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
You should have.
Because there are so many lists of the tag or P paragraph type.
True. And all right. Okay. I'll bend the rule. I'm going to bend the rules here. That's a good point. You can edit the HTML, but only to add classes. All right. Actually, no IDs. You can't add IDs. Only to add classes. You can add classes. You shouldn't have to add classes. But you can. Next week, after we've actually learned the rest of the positioning stuff and how to do more stuff, then we can go to like a fuller sense.
So no IDs for HTML. But even though we want IDs in HTML.
If you want to add an ID, okay, here's the thing. Classes, 100%. You can add all the classes you want. If you want to add an ID, you need to explain why. Because I have IDs here. Like ID equals contact. There's one little hint too here. We kind of got to this. I feel like the reason I'm going to allow you is because we didn't really fully cover a lot of this. But if you have an ID set up like this or an ID set up like this, if I wanted to style this H1 specifically, I could say space for descendant H1. Okay? So the descendant selector works the same way with IDs as it does with elements, tags, right? Does that make sense? The concept there? So this is saying every H1 that is a descendant of main header, do the following, right? So, color orange, blah. There we go, and now it's orange. So using this knowledge, I mean, you should be able to go a pretty long way, right? So like in the bio, for instance, there's an ID called bio here. So if you do #bio space, H1, then you should be able to see that there too. Yeah, I know, I repeated H1s on this page. What?
Do you need to fill the black images you put on?
I'm using placeholders, so you can just use the placeholders. Yeah. I mean, if you really want to change the images, I guess you can. I'm not going to complain. I could see how placeholder images would just be kind of boring and offensive to the aesthetically minded. So, okay. You're really pushing this don't edit the HTML thing, huh? Man. You're like, you know what, go ahead and just edit all the HTML you want. No. The practice here is you want to be able to edit the HTML just using CSS. Like I don't want, you don't, because this often happens in life where you just have a page structure and either you can't edit it or you don't know how or your developer won't pick up the phone. So you need to learn how to do this. Yeah, it's kind of like it's sort of real worldy, but it's also practicing your fundamentals. Administrative. Let me quit recording. I should have the first week homeworks back to you in like today or tomorrow. No, not today. Probably be tomorrow. So look for those. And